see in the chat so we know who is joining us. Becca, can you see how many participants are in the meeting right now?
We have 10 total participants. 3 of them are us, and then people, it looks like they're just getting signed.
Okay, perfect. Well, as you all are getting your names and agencies in the chat, I will go ahead and start with introducing myself. I'm Kayla Williams. I'm a program coordinator with Community Services. I am joined by Rebecca Royce, who's going to be running the slide deck for me, and I identify any questions that we have during the presentation. If you do have questions during the presentation, go ahead and raise your hand if you'd like to speak them out loud, or go ahead and drop them in the chat, and Rebecca will pause as necessary to look at those. We also have Michael Torres here with us. So the meeting is being recorded. Make sure you identify yourself when you're talking, and then just some info on how you can enable closed captioning or how you can lock any participant videos in WebEx. If you'd like to be added to the stakeholders list and you are not currently, you can reach out to Janet Snook, and her email is right there. That's how you're going to stay up to date on future funding opportunities. You can also reach out to any of your county contacts. So with that, let's go ahead and get started with our Eviction Prevention Rental Assistance Program, which we are going to refer to as EPREP moving forward. So we want to go over some important dates with you guys. The first one being your ability to ask questions. So as you're going through the RFA process, you might have some questions. You're going to ask them through Bonfire, and you will see that the last date for submitting those questions is about a week before applications are going to be finalized. Applications are due on July 21st. Bonfire will show that it says July 22nd, but that is because it closes exactly at 12 a.m. on the 22nd. That will give you some time if you are pushing the deadline to get it in after business close if you really need to. Staff will review the applications, and we will reach out with any additional information that we need in August of 2023. We will have a CAB subcommittee that's going to do our recommendations. Hopefully by the end of August, but definitely by the beginning of September. Recommendations are going to be submitted to the County Council for approval in September. That's also when we will be reaching out and starting our contract negotiations with any agencies. And then our contracts are set to start on October 1st of this year. Does anybody have questions about the timeline before we keep going? I think it's pretty straightforward. Okay, so for funding for this year, fiscal year 24 and fiscal year 25, there will be 4.3 million available each year, so an 8.6 million total. The minimum request for applications is going to be $100,000 per year. Unspent funds at the end of this contract period cannot be carried over, and they must be returned to Commerce. So it's going to be really important that what you're requesting, you will be able to spend out. And then again, just a reminder of the purpose for this RFA. We need to solicit programs that provide targeted prevention services for Clark County residents that are most likely to become homeless or suffer severe health consequences because of eviction. Okay, so this one is our Eviction Prevention Buy-in for Organization Subgrant Requirement. So Commerce is requiring us to subcontract at least 10% of the eviction prevention total award to organizations that serve and are substantially governed by marginalized populations, so buy-in for organizations. What that is going to look like is that any buy-in for organization that has the capacity to provide rental assistance is encouraged to apply during this RFA process. Once this RFA closes, we can identify the amount of funds being requested between the nonprofit organizations and the buy-in-fors, and we can identify how much money needs to be allocated out to the buy-in-fors to get us to that 10%. What we will do if the buy-and-fors that apply during this RFA period are not able to take on 10% through rental assistance programs, we will open up an additional RFA for outreach services that will be buy-and-for specific. Does anyone have questions about that?
There are no questions in the chat so far.
Rebecca, go ahead. Okay, so these are the funding sources you will see if you are to get a contract with us. House bill is in here for our local document recording fees. However, you will only see this in the admin amount. You shouldn't have any local document recording fees built into your contract. So the main dollars that you will see will be CHG dollars, which follow the SDG guidelines. And Rebecca is going to show us where you can pull up those guidelines.
This is the main homepage for Commerce's homeless housing assistance unit. If you Google Consolidated Homeless Grant or Commerce CHG or anything like that, it'll give you this link to go straight to this page. And then under grant materials, you will see several different items. We are working under the SDG guidelines, so make sure that you click on this link and a PDF will open up that goes into Commerce's Dropbox that shows all of the guidelines for all of the CHG, SDG programs. Now, this is going to be very expansive. There are several different programs that are under these guidelines, but we want to make sure that you are focused on the targeted prevention component or programs for the funds. And so the homeless prevention section is number 5 in the guidelines, and this is where you'll find a lot of that information. Your contracts, if you're awarded funding, will have you go to these to verify eligibility and allowability of costs. And so it's really important that you're aware of where to find these and how to look this information up. Anything you'd like to add, Kayla, before I go back to the PowerPoint?
No, I don't believe so. Thank you, Rebecca. Alrighty, so for program requirements, all proposals need to follow some general requirements. All of the application requirements are incorporated into the performance contracts of selected proposals. So just to look at the timeline, our contracts again are set to start for October 1st, and they will go through June 30th of 2025. This is that date, June 30th, 2025, that all grant funds must be spent. So we cannot have any carryover past this date. And for the fiscal year 24, you will want to do your best to stay on track and make sure you spend out and we don't have any carryover into fiscal year 25 if we do not have to. We also have some community services, general terms and conditions. Those will be sent out along with all contracts, and they have the general county terms that we need to follow and that all agencies are expected to follow. Contract performance, so all work that is occurring, all activities that are being reimbursed need to happen and take place in Clark County unless you have Fire County authorization. Programs are required to enter accurate data into HMIS no more than 10 days following enrollment into the program and by the 5th of the following for services provided. And then exception is for households and that fall under VAWA. So any households experiencing DV are not required to have their information put into HMIS for protection. Alrighty, quarterly reports and year-end narrative reports must be completed. Reports need to include accounting of all grievances filed during the period. All programs need to include peer support, a trauma-informed approach, motivational interviewing, and cultural awareness. They need to provide and assist households with connections to other community resources and people supports that will help them in improving their housing stability, safety, well-being, and achieving their long-term goals. And they need to be staffed by a core of employees who are suitably trained to effectively utilize HMIS as required, as well as the trauma-informed services. All right, programs must promote dignity and respect. There should be formal policies and procedures and value statements that convey clear expectations that people will be treated with dignity and respect in every interaction. Staff should be monitoring adherence to the expectations and providing people with grievance processes. Have expectations of program participants that are clearly communicated and easily accessible for review. Practice cultural awareness and practice equity. Set only minimal and reasonable requirements for program participants. So this should be a low barrier program, and you should enforce requirements in a fair and transparent way. Programs should limit eligibility criteria to those required by funders and or facility structure. So if you are an agency serving veterans or families with children, and that is fine, but you also need to follow the eligibility criteria that we have set in the contracts and that Commerce has passed down. So these are those eligibility requirements. So pay close attention to the at risk of homelessness. This is going to be the main difference between who is eligible for prevention versus who is eligible for other assistance. So all this at risk of homelessness, they may have a missed rent payment and currently owe all or part of a rent payment. This could be current month or previous month. They have moved because of economic reasons 2 or more times during the 60 days immediately preceding the application for assistance. They are living in the home of another because of economic hardship. They have been notified that their right to occupy their housing or living situation will be terminated within 21 days after the date of application for assistance. They live in a hotel or motel, but this part is important. The cost is not paid for by a charitable organization or by federal, state, or local government programs. So if they are living in a hotel or motel, it must be coming out of their own pocket for them to be considered at risk of homelessness here. They live in an SRO or efficiency apartment unit in which there reside more than 2 persons, or lives in a larger housing unit in which there reside more than 1.5 persons per room. Or they're exiting a publicly funded institution or system of care. This will be really important when we're working with our jails or with our hospitals. And then they must be at or below 80% AMI. So if they meet the criteria of at risk for homelessness based on all of these eligibility requirements, one of these eligibility requirements, and they are at or below 80%, they are eligible. People will still be prioritized for services using targeted prevention. Agencies are not going to have to use their own tool. They will not be prioritizing their own households. Households will be prioritized through the Housing Solutions Center and Council for the Homeless. Alrighty, so we have our 4 C's: communication, coordination, cooperation, and collaboration. The thing we really want to highlight here is coordination versus collaboration. So coordination is the process in which 2 or more participants link. So if our agencies are working together in a harmonized or synchronized interaction, versus collaboration in which the agencies are working together to deal with issues that cannot be solved individually. They're forming partnerships and alliances, and they're working together to ensure all barriers are met for households. So the main difference here is, coordination. You're letting each other know what you offer, so it's identified in the community, versus collaboration is you're really coming together to make sure that the process is a partnership and not just individual agencies working with a household. And then, is there a question in the chat, Rebecca?
Yeah, before we get to the question, I just want to highlight there is a question in the request for applications for making sure and really ensuring that our agencies have collaborations. That's why we're highlighting this slide. So if you don't have collaborations right now, start working on them so that you have them prepared for your submittal of your request for your proposal to the request for application. There is a question in the chat. Is as a DV agency, are they able to utilize the separate coordinated entry process for survivors?
That's a good question. What do you think, Rebecca?
I think we can look into this a little bit more to ensure that we are following the procedures for the SDG guidelines, and we can provide a follow-up statement for that, unless Michael knows otherwise.
So SDG guidelines will allow the YWCA as the Domestic Violences Services Organization to coordinate with coordinated entry, but use a separate process. So Beth, in that case, like, we will be working with you to see how the screening and referrals are done for services with the YWCA.
Any other questions before we move on to the next slide?
Alrighty, so outputs versus outcomes. Outputs are services or actions, so the work that is being done, and outcomes are the results, so the change that is happening because of the output. I really want to highlight this because it's often during our quarterly reports. These will appear as the same number quite frequently because the goal is the same. So an example would be if you set your agency goal of having 10 households maintain housing stability, you receive 20 referrals and 10 were able to increase income, receive assistance, maintain stability. You would meet your goal of 10 households being served. So your outcome would be 10. However, your output should be the 20 referrals if all those households were actively engaged, if they were working with case managers, if the agency was working with that household on achieving the goals, then your output should really reflect those efforts and your outcomes will be those successes. And then outcomes and outputs proposed in the application will be used in the contract if you're awarded funding. We cannot reduce the data points as this is a determining factor in selecting the proposal for funding. So if you are proposing a goal, but you forgot that you needed to increase it, or you calculated it wrong, you're going to need to figure out a way to leverage other funds to meet the outcome. Does anyone have questions here? Okay. Evaluation and selection. So administrative review will be conducted for new agencies. We're actually going to conduct it for all the agencies. So for those that have submitted an RFA with us before, some of the questions may seem redundant. And for those who have not, they will be thorough. Additional documentations may be asked, so we will reach out to you if we need something more. Evaluation and recommendations will be completed by a CAB subcommittee in late August or early September. There's more information at this link here. Applications are going to be scored on a 100-point system. Number of points available per question will be indicated in the questionnaire. Some of the questions are scored based on specific criteria, which is also going to be included in the question. Some helpful hints: make sure you read everything thoroughly. There's a lot of information in all the documents, so take your time. We have a few weeks to go through everything. Answer the question being asked. So these questions were selected for a reason. It's because we need this information, and it is important that we are thoroughly answering the specific question that is being asked in the questionnaires. The review committee is made up of community members and they might not understand acronyms or social service lingo. So when you're writing your answers to these questionnaires, act like you're writing them to someone who doesn't understand what the homeless crisis response system is or does. Make it very clear that anyone who picks it up could understand what your organization is offering. Use the documents referenced. Work on your collaborations now. Focus on the program specifically, not the agency as a whole. Applications that do not meet the intent of the RFA will not be approved for review. So there's going to be an initial review process internally by our staff here. And if any programs are not meeting the intent of the RFA, they will not be pushed to the next step, which is the CAB review. If we are asking for a vote and you propose an airplane, your proposal does not meet the intent. All right, the fun part. So Bonfire is where you're going to submit your RFA. There's a list of documents here, and there's also 2 links provided for where you can view the documents further. I'm not going to go over them on this slide. I will go over them in the next slide or the slide after as they appear in Bonfire. Okay, so when you first click on that link, you will see the opportunity here. You can click under action and view opportunity to make it larger. You will be able to view the opportunity even if you don't have you haven't signed up for Bonfire. However, you cannot apply until you sign up. So once you're in the RFA, you will see a long list on the left side. If you click on files and you see public files, this is going to be where we have everything that you need for the RFA. And Rebecca, is there any way to zoom in a little bit? If not, I have it up.
So
that's okay. I can read it over here. And you guys will all have these slides as well. The slides in the recording will be pushed out so you can look over things. So I'm going to go over a few of what we have in here. The first one is the final bill report. This is just information from the legislature that has pretty much where the money is coming from and what the specific purpose of funding these programs is. So if you're just interested in knowing more, that's there. Anything that you have to turn in will have a note in the description that says this form is required, review and sign. And I think there are a few of those. So just look in that description right in the middle and it will tell you if it's something that needs to be signed. We have our best and emerging practices. We have an example of the targeted prevention eligibility screening form. This is not going to be what Council for the Homeless uses because the one that we use is more specific to our community, but this is just an example for anyone hoping to understand more of what this looks like and what the state wants this to look like. Conflict of interest, this is required and it has that there. We have our EPRAP proposed budget table. This is the Excel form you need to use to do the budget proposal. Please do not submit your own Excel form. Please download this one, use it, and then submit it. We also have the RFA description. This is where you're going to find the bulk of your information, and it's really going to go into what we are looking for in a program and the expectations that we have. And we have our letter of collaboration. We also have the reference and example in there. So if you're not sure what a true collaboration looks like, go ahead and go into there and see a past example of a collaboration that we have in the community or that an agency has between them and a partner. And then we have our 2023 income limits for House Bill and CHG programs. So if you have any questions, you will go into the messages section on that left side and you can ask any questions to us. We will respond within 2 business days to any questions that you have in here. And again, the final day for asking questions is July 14th. So please start looking now, go through all the documentation, have a whack at starting the RFA if you'd like to, but I would identify your questions early so we have plenty of time to troubleshoot and go through them and get all the information that you guys need to have to submit this RFA. The sooner, the better.
One thing that I'll add for this is that the recording to this and any other Q&A responses will be distributed through the public notices through Bonfire. So we highly recommend that you come back in and check this periodically to make sure that you have all of the up-to-date information.
Alrighty, so in addition to the notes in the file section, the description that tells you what you need to have, the requested information section is going to be probably your best bet for making sure you are staying clear and organized, because this is going to highlight every single thing that is required for you to turn in your application. So the dark green are all things that are required. They are all connected to those files, so you'll know exactly what it is because it's the same title, same information. It's all in the file section. That light green one is just if you have any additional things you want us to know or forms you want to share with us. It's a blank spot for you to be able to add additional documents that you think we might need. And then another important thing about this section is this is where you're going to get your questionnaire. So you'll see there are 2 questionnaires required. One is for staff scoring. So that's when we're going to do that initial assessment, make sure that what you're proposing is in line with the RFA, and we will score you and then deem whether or not you get to go to that next step, which is the CAB receiving your other questionnaire for scoring. And you will see in the top under Eviction Prevention Rental Assistance Program, the 3rd one over is where you'll click on the questionnaire and where you can download both of those. There are 3 tabs within the questionnaire as well. So when you download it, it will look like it's blank or it doesn't have anything. And if you look at the very bottom, there are 1, 2, and 3. There should be instructions. There should be a blank one, and then the 3rd one should be, I think, your scoring. But if you have any questions, just reach out to me and we can walk through that. So technical assistance in Bonfire. I will do my best possible to answer anything you guys might have, but if it is something specific to Bonfire, like an upload problem or, something wacky going on their end, it's going to be so much quicker for you guys to get an answer if you ask Bonfire directly. I had my own issue during the RFA process where I was trying to find an answer for myself within my agency, and I spent 2 days periodically trying to figure it out. And when I finally reached out to Bonfire, they answered within an hour and I had all my frustrations alleviated. So please reach out to them, anything specific to them. They are going to be your best bet for troubleshooting wacky things on the Bonfire side. Submitting your applications, they're going to be through Bonfire if you haven't got that yet. To view or start your application, here are those links again. The Clark County website is just going to have more information. It's going to have those deadlines again. And then you can look directly on Bonfire if you're interested in seeing the documents we need, more information about what the programs are that we are trying to solicit. Again, you don't need to sign up to Bonfire to view the opportunity, but you do to submit an application. All communications are going to go directly through Bonfire. They're going to be in that messaging section that we showed you earlier. To ask an RFA related question, use the opportunity Q&A, again located in that message section. And then those notifications are going to be published under the public notices. So you'll see your first one by the end of this week when we publish the video recording of this presentation and the slides. After today, all questions must be submitted through the opportunity Q&A in Bonfire. If you send me an email, I will ask you to submit the question in the opportunity Q&A in Bonfire. This is because any questions might be useful to other agencies as they're going through their process. So we want to make sure we're sharing the same information across the board. Responses to questions will be posted within those 2 business days. And then again, last day for questions is July 14th at 5 p.m. So make sure you're looking ahead of time and you're getting your questions in as soon as possible.
We have a question in the chat asking about what the indirect rate for this funding is. So this would be our administrative cost.
10%. All right, does anybody have any additional questions? There's a lot of information to go over. All right, Rebecca, do you have anything you want to add? Michael, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Nothing for me.
No, I don't have anything. If you didn't get a chance to put your name and agency in the chat, please do so we can have a record. There's a lot of new names and faces in the meeting today. We're happy to see you and excited to create new partnerships.
All right, perfect. Well, thank you guys for joining us today. Go ahead and check out that RFA. If you have any questions, please send them through that Q&A. If you have any questions not specifically related, or if you're trying to find out if your program does make sense for the RFA, go ahead and shoot me an email. We can walk through your specific circumstances if we need to. Okay, thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, Kayla.
Thanks.